Let's talk about the position property. The position property allows us to specify where on the page we want something to appear. It commonly has 5 different values. We're not going to really look at sticky, so if you want to look at sticky, you can play around with that, but it's not supported on a lot of older browsers. It's relatively new, so we're just going to look at static, relative, fixed, and absolute. So static is how elements are positioned by default. So things start at the top in the normal flow and go down to the bottom. There's no special positioning. A position relative, it's when you just slightly change where its normal position is. So if you use position and a value of relative and then give a left, right, top, or bottom as a property now, not as a value, and then give its value as an amount of pixels, then it will change where it is in relation to normal flow, where it would otherwise appear. So in this case, they changed the position to relative and then set left to 30 pixels, and that moved it over to the left by 30 pixels. Now you may have already noticed fixed, because fixed has been appearing down here this whole time. Fixed is going to stay in the same place no matter if the page is scrolled. Okay, so in this case, they use a bottom of 0 and a right of 0 to get it right here in this bottom right corner, and then it stays there this whole time. A position of absolute is kind of positioned near the next element to it. So we're going to kind of look at that one in just a minute, but position absolute. If you go to my CodePen link that's somewhere where you're watching this video, this will allow you to play around with this more. So open this up, and this was something I created last year to help students understand the difference between these 4. So if you can read these instructions and follow along, feel free to just stop the video here and complete these tasks on your own, but if you want to stick around for the video, that's fine as well. Okay, so what I have here are 4 boxes that I've created divs for. So each div has a solid color, it has a different color background, and it has some opacity set to it so we can see how its position changed and still see what's behind it. Instruction 1 says add position relative in top 25 to box 3. So we're just going to copy that code, and we're going to find our ID 3. And just within that set of curly brackets, I'll do Command V on the keyboard to paste. That's Command V as in Victor, not B as in boy. And now you should notice that your code changed. So this absolute positioning, this position relative, it positioned it just slightly outside. Box 3 is what changed, where it would otherwise appear. Okay? Now, if you want to play around with that and you want to see what happens when you change your top, left, and right and bottom properties, feel free. So if we did left 50 pixels, see how it moved to the left 50 pixels. Once you tinker with that, you can delete the statement that you just added all the way through to the opacity. Okay, now it moves back to its original location. We're going to add position fixed to the ID2. So copy that code and find ID2. And just before that curly bracket closes, we'll add position fixed. Now position fixed, notice how it changed the width of the element. It only fits the contents of the element now. And when we scroll, it stays in the same location. Now we could tell it exactly where to be by setting those left, right, top and bottom properties, not values, setting those properties to a value of certain pixels, and then we could tell it exactly where to be. Okay, but it will stay no matter how you scroll. So play around with those if you want to experiment with different values, and we're going to leave this one for just a second. If you did play with any top, bottom, or right values, delete those values. And then now for box 4, which is going to be our absolute positioning, we'll use position absolute, and it has a top and a right. So in box 4, we're going to add those. And now box 4 appears up here. So notice with position fixed and position absolute, we can specify exactly where we want them on the page. Okay, so position absolute allowed us to move it up here. What it's doing is 50 pixels down from the top and 50 pixels from the right side is where it positioned that element. But the difference is the fixed remains where it is when you scroll, and the absolute will not. Okay, so experiment with this page, play around with these so you'll have a better understanding of fixed, relative, absolute. Static is just the default, so you're used to seeing everything in static, but these play around with.